than I do the people I study with. And well, you're saying we need a creed. By the way, may I mention that the members of the church that give me problems with using a study method are the same members of the church who haven't converted one person in their life. They have zero credibility with me. Zero. But they're going to be the loudest voice in the room. And they're going to challenge you, Jason. They're going to say, what gave you the authority to have this little book on me? That's a creed book, isn't it? I mean, we don't need anything but the Bible. But that's what you really got, is just a Bible. Because all that is Bible verses. Isn't that all it is, Bible verses? There's nothing man-made about it, except that we put it on paper and we pull the word out and say, fill in the blank. And we ask you, do you understand it? Well, let's just carry this a little further now. Let's just go a little further. Let me go back up. Let's go to Matthew chapter 28. Everybody go to Matthew 28, verse 19. We're going to keep developing this before I really get into the heart of my lesson. Matthew 28. And I know you've read this 1,000 times, but I always learn something. There's so much in Matthew 28. We're going to go to verse 19, and we're going to drill in right here. Jesus said, all the power, all authority has been given unto me in heaven and earth. Verse 19. Go ye therefore, and what? What does it say? Teach. I got a question. Is the gospel a teaching gospel? Is it something that should be taught? And so what does it not say? Let's notice what it doesn't say. The Great Commission doesn't say, go ye therefore and read the book of Genesis. Does it say that? Does it say, go ye therefore and read the book of Acts? Because I've had people say, oh, well, we just need to let them read the book of Acts and they can figure it out. Is that what it says? Does it really say, go ye therefore and read the book of Acts? All right, let's look at some other passages together. And let's go to the book of John. Let's go to John chapter 6. Look at verses 44 and 45. John 6, 44 and 45. Now, again, we're developing a lesson right from Scripture. John 6, 44 and 45. No man can come to me except the Father which has sent me draw him, and I will raise him up in the last day. It is written in the prophets, and they shall be what? Taught of God. They shall be taught of God. Now, that's not all it says. Every man, therefore, that has heard and hath learned of the Father cometh unto me. And so, the gospel is a taught gospel. It's not a read gospel, and I know we need to read the Bible, and I'm not discouraging anyone from reading their Bible, but it's a taught religion. Christianity is not a bought religion. It's a taught religion. And you've got to teach it if you're going to expect anyone to come to the Father. Now, let's go to Romans chapter 10. Romans 10. We're just going to put a few of these together to make sure we're following Scripture. Verse 15, how shall they preach except they be sent? Romans 10:15, as it is written, how beautiful are the feet of them which preach the gospel and bring glad tidings unto them. And notice this, it is a gospel that requires someone to be sent. It has a written word. It's beautiful, and we need people coming to teach it. And so I'm going to begin with the premise that Jesus taught in Luke 24, that we need a method. I want to try and exterminate the voices of those that we don't need a method. We just need to read the book of Acts. We just need to read the book of Genesis. And I'm not against reading the book of Genesis, but how many of us think if we knew nothing about anything, we could pick up Genesis, start reading through? Do you think most people are going to do that? Just read through that, starting at Genesis, go to Exodus, Leviticus, and be able to pick up all that? It's going to be hard. It's not impossible. I know that there are those who've done it. But what if you had someone to guide them? Well, wait a minute. Isn't that what happened in Acts 8? When Philip, who is Philip? He's called a what? Now help me. What is Philip? He's an evangelist. And what did Philip the evangelist do? How can I accept some man, what? What's the word? Guide me. Teach me. What's our job? To guide people, to teach people. And so Philip, he doesn't just pick some random scripture. Isn't it interesting what he does? He goes and he teaches him, starting with verses that talk about who? Jesus. And when he talks about Jesus, well, all of a sudden, guess what we're talking about? How do you have a relationship with Christ? You better be buried with him. First premise is this. the foundation of this lesson is this. You need a method. Don't wing it. If you really want to bring people to Christ, telling them to read the book of Acts, I know is good. Again, I'm not against it. It's not a sin. You're not wicked. You're not a transgressor. There's no iniquity it's not wicked. So don't put words in my mouth. That's not what I'm saying. But I want you to be effective. And I told you this morning when we formed the School of Evangelism, number one is faithfulness to God. But number two, we want it to work. We want something that can be executed. We want results. And if you want results, I would strongly suggest, like Jesus, you put together a method. Tim, thank you for that method. Tim has a method. And when they go to, it's Honduras, Tim? Costa Rica. It's right here. It's a method to walk people through the Bible, to help them understand truth. Tim understood when he got down there, telling, well, let's read the book of Acts. Perhaps not a sin, not the best way to do it. So let me talk about 7 evangelism techniques. Number one, what's the most effective? So if I could wave a magic wand and I could give you only one method, in other words, I only had one thing I could leave with you, not 7, but one, what would I leave you? The personal Bible study. You're never going to find a more effective way to bring a person to Christ than to sit down at a kitchen table and study the Word of God. Almost all the conversions I've experienced in my life have come from number one. It would be the vast majority of them. I'm talking like 90+% of the conversions all come from this. I'm not suggesting that there are not other methods. I'm just suggesting that this one right here is going to be hard to beat. If you know of a better way to bring people to Christ, then number one, I am all ears. I would love for you to bring it to my attention. And I want to see your numbers. I want you to tell me what is it, because I don't know what it is. But I know this one. If you can learn a method, and I'm not suggesting that there's one method, there are many methods. The Jewel Miller, Evangelism Visualized, that's a great method. In fact, several years ago, we purchased that at House to House, Heart to Heart. We remastered it. We put a ton of resources into this. You don't remaster something like this for free. And now we have it completely updated, brand new graphics, usable on a USB drive, and it's still a great tool. No more 1970s, looking stick figures. We got it brought up so it's still a great tool. All right? But I'm going to mention 3 of them. I'm going to mention these 3 because almost all the conversions I've had in my life come from these 3. All right? Number 1, back to the Bible. I'm going to demonstrate and talk about back to the Bible with detail tonight. But I'm going to encourage you to spend some time learning back to the Bible. Bobby Bates, when he was an instructor at Bear Valley in the 1970s, he wrote back to the Bible. Now, Bobby Bates, I know this because I know the family well, and I know how he did it. He had Evangelism Visualized by Jewel Miller. He had Ivan Stewart's Open Bible Study, and he had some other tools. And he saw in these tools that there were strengths and weaknesses. And he says, I'm going to draw on their strengths, and I'm going to try to fill the weaknesses. And I'm going to create a study that takes the best from all the studies. And most people who use back to the Bible say, hey, look, I see a little Jewel Miller in there. I see a little Open Bible Study in there. And so what you'll find is that he kind of took the best of all worlds, and then he took his life experience, and he wrote a study method. And let me tell you how he did it. So this is some background. He's in class. He's teaching at the Bear Valley School of Preaching in Denver, Colorado. And he sends his students out and to evangelize. And he says, you have one question to ask today. And I want you to ask this question. He'd give it to them. And they take it out, ask the question, come back. He'd say, what was the response? And then he'd say, go out and ask this question. They go out and ask another question. He'd take it, write it down, and say, go ask this question. He'd rewrite the question. What he was doing is developing the tool. And he'd tweak it, he would change it, and finally, he published Back to the Bible. That's how he published it. He did it literally in the field. Back to the Bible is a 3-lesson course. There's a reason it's 3 lessons, and it's a biblical reason. I'm going to share that with you tonight. But I would strongly encourage you to take some time and learn how to use Back to the Bible. It has a very high percentage of conversion. There are people converted literally every day. I know that because I get the reports. And so I would encourage you to take some time to learn how to use Back to the Bible. Number 2, All right, well, I'm not spending time there because that's my lesson tonight. Number 2, believe the Bible. I will spend more time here. So in your backpack, you have these booklets, all right? There's 3 of them. So when I started the School of Evangelism, one of the challenges that we faced was the prospect of a changing culture. And people would say, hey, Rob, you know, it's great, back to the Bible, for people who believe in God, believe in the Bible, believe in Jesus. But I'm finding that there are people who don't. What do I use? So let me give you what I used to say. Go to apologeticspress.org. Y'all familiar with Apologetics Press? Okay. Get a video, download it, read a book by Eric Lyon, read a book by, someone else. And well, we all know that's not the most effective way to teach people. Or you lose a lot of people like that. I said, well, surely we can come up with a Bible study that's apologetically driven. So there are correspondence courses, but once again, when you go to a correspondence course, your level of success decreases dramatically. It's a dramatic decline in success. So I said, let's create a Bible study that is like Back to the Bible, but based on apologetics. So I went to material at AP. I went to Bart Warren and the Warren Apologetics Center, where Thomas Warren started that. I went to friends that I had. I went to preaching schools that I had. And I already had something I'd been using for years. I said, help me develop this. And so we spent quite a bit of resources trying to develop this, and we came up with these 3 booklets. Now let's talk about them. You have them in your backpack if you want to put your hands on them or take any notes, because these are helpful. So here's what we did. Lesson 1, okay, it's the gold book. Every color is keyed. So gold represents God, right? Heaven, the throne of God. And so what this is a book about the affirmation of God. God exists. It's using the very same style or similar style than Back to the Bible, which is fill in the blank. And you're doing it with them. And so it's a very simple study. It relies heavily on just good old common sense. It's going to be hard to get this wrong. The purpose of this booklet is for the person you're with to come to a conclusion, okay, there could be a God. We don't really name him. We don't know who he is. We just know he exists. So if you can accomplish that in book number 1, that is, you sit down with somebody and they eventually say, okay, there could be a God. I get your point. It makes sense. It doesn't mean they believe in Jehovah God. They just believe in God. So we accomplished step number 1. All right, step number 2. Now let's take them to Bible. And let's show them that this is the Word of God. We're going to use evidence. We're going to show them things that make the Bible irrefutable. There's no other possibility. It must be written by God, therefore inspired, and that God is identified as Jehovah God. All right, and we're going to get to that point. This is Bible inspiration. By the way, it's green. The seed is the Word of God. So we're planting it, right? It's green. We know it. And we also have B for Bible, ABC. These are supplemental lessons. They can stand alone or be used together. Or Back to the Bible must be used together. Believe the Bible can be broken apart if needed. Because you can meet someone who believes in God, but they don't believe in Jesus. So I'm going to start with lesson B. Does that make sense to everybody? All right, let's go to lesson C. All right. This is called Believe the Bible. Christ, C. By the way, purple, what does that stand for? What's purple? Royalty, right? So we color key it for you. All right. So who's Jesus? So there's a growing number of people in our culture that did not go to VBS. They did not go to Bible class. They didn't have grandmother reading the Bible. They really never went to church. They've heard the name Jesus, but really to them, there's not a real difference between Jesus, the Buddha, and Muhammad. There's just not a lot of difference between them. And so in this case here, all right, we would encourage them to use Believe the Bible. So that's what Believe the Bible covers. Any questions about that? Believe the Bible. All right. Anybody used Believe the Bible before? Anybody used it? Raise your hand. All right. Got a few people who've used it. All right. So normally I find that it's used more frequently in cities, especially around universities. All right, because you have a student population that's been inundated with this atheism and all of these various isms and trying to convince you that God is not real, and so it's needed. John Garza is one of our regional trainers, and while living in Austin, Texas, he would tell me, I think it was like 1 out of every 4 studies he did, he had to start with Believe the Bible, because there are so many people who did not believe. Now, it just depends where you live. Now, if you lived in a European culture, New Zealand, Australia, you're going to find most people, they're not ready for Back to the Bible. because they have no foundation. It all depends where you live and the culture that surrounds the people that you associate. So there's believe. Let's go to the next one. You can pull this one out. It's called Does It Matter? How many of you have used Does It Matter? Raise your hand. It's a great study. And Tim, this would go along kind of with what you said to me earlier. Tim said, I needed a quick way, something concise because of time constraints. Well, in the 1970s, Bobby was developing Back to the Bible. It was a hit. People loved it. I mean, it was a lot of conversions. Someone came to Bobby and said, listen, Bobby, we go overseas, and we don't have time to do 3 lessons. Okay, we need something short and concise. So what he did is he took Back to the Bible. He took most of the meat out, made it this skeletons, the bone structure, and little different wording, and he created something called Does It Matter? So Does It Matter is what we call the one study method. It's the one study method. And so if you go on overseas trips, we go through a lot of these every year. We have them in Spanish. We have it also in 9 languages. We have it in Japanese, Chinese, several languages in India. We have it in Russian. And so we have it translated and people take them overseas. So it's called Does It Matter? It's the one study method. This is important. Do not circumnavigate back to the Bible because of your timetable, because you want it to be quicker. I want you to listen again carefully here, because I think sometimes we do what's best for us and not them, and we think, oh, it's quicker. I'll use Does It Matter because, I don't have a lot of time here. You're not helping them. The conversion rate with Back to the Bible is higher than Does It Matter. It's going to go deeper. It's going to give them a better grasp, develop their faith in a more full way. So we do not recommend sidetracking the fuller study. When do you use Does It Matter? Okay, foreign mission trips, number 1. Number 2, someone was raised in the church, they're 17, 18, 16, 20, 25, and they've never obeyed the gospel. Okay, they have heard how many sermons? How many times have they heard the Great Commission, the invitation? Hundreds, thousands. They don't need Back to the Bible. They need one method. Maybe they've been sitting in your pew for months and months and months and visiting. They've heard the gospel over and over again. All right, so I use one method. Maybe you go to a hospital, a nursing home, or someone's home, and you know their time is limited. Do they have 6 weeks? I don't know. 6 days? I really don't know. Okay, but I'm not going to chance it because I know they're looking straight into eternity, and at any time they could leave us. I use Does It Matter? And so I use Does It Matter in what we call special circumstances. It is not a replacement of Back to the Bible. It is an additional tool. So how many of you have a toolbox or maybe a tackle box? Anybody have a tackle box at home somewhere for fishing? All right, anybody? Raise your hand if you got a tackle box. Keno, how many lures are in your tackle box? Yeah, a bunch. Why? That's exactly right. That's because you're fishing. He's a wrong kind of fishing. So what we need to do is adapt. And so when I go fishing, right, I put a spoon on or something, I cast it out there, and I'll give it 15, 20 minutes. But if I get nothing, right, what am I going to do, Jason? That's how I put plastic. I'm going to try plastic worm and see what works. So it's always good to have additional study methods. So Tim gave me his. Tim, I'm going to use this, and I'll tell you how I'm going to use it. So I'm going through Back to the Bible, and they don't obey the gospel. Now, before I was in touch with evangelism as I am now, I'd studied it, I really boiled it down, I would kind of give up. I wouldn't know what to do. Now what do? I never say last study. I never say, this is your last study. They don't obey, so they think it's over. It's never over. Bobby Bates wrote something in a book, and this is what he said. The best close is never close. I never close a study. So if I go through Back to the Bible 3 booklets and they don't obey the gospel, guess where I'm going next? I may pick up Tim's study right here and say, let's do this. It's called the Word of Life Bible Study. Let's do it next week. And if that doesn't work, I may pick up another one, like Does It Matter? I may pick up Open Bible Study. I may pick up Jewel Miller. I may pick up something else. But the point is, I never stop studying. Keno, have you ever done that before? Yeah. And what happens if you keep studying? That's exactly right. They eventually get there. So you never give up. You never stop studying with people. You just keep studying, because sometimes it takes a little longer for the fruit to develop. We were talking about this, Caleb, earlier, And, I asked Caleb, how's it going? And he says, we're developing fruit. He said, Robert, it takes time. And, sometimes you can go into a church and you got 10 people, they're on the edge of their seats ready to obey the gospel. And we go through an evangelism seminar, you get 10 baptisms. Sometimes I go to a church and they're just not there. The fruit's already been picked. So you got to start with somebody who really, you're going to have to start from scratch. By the way, that's what we're doing, right? We're starting from scratch. We're going all the way back to the top of the tree, and we're developing fruit up there. And it's going to take a while before that fruit gets down where you can pick it. It takes time for fruit to develop. You can't develop it in 24 hours, all right? So it takes time to develop, and that's what we're doing. So just keep all these things in mind as you develop a heart for evangelism. So, number one, most effective way to do a personal Bible, an evangelistic approach is a personal Bible study. Any questions about that? All right, let's go to number two. Number two, virtual personal studies. How did I learn about this? You asked me 2018 about I would have no clue what you're talking about. In fact, I'd have laughed at you, and I would have ignored you, and I would have said that is a waste of time. All right, because I don't want I don't have time to learn how to do any of this. Things changed. 2020, things just changed rapidly. What happened? COVID. What did it force us to do? It forced us to develop our, virtual skills. Zoom. I used to ask this question. It doesn't work as well anymore because it's been a little long. But I get a big audience, like 400 or 500 people, and it'd be like 2021, 2022. I say, how many of you heard of Zoom before COVID? Like 10 people would raise their hand. Okay, then I'd ask, how many of you have heard of Zoom since COVID? The whole auditorium raises their hand. Things changed quickly, didn't they? Everybody was forced. Okay, so we have one of our regional trainers. His name is Eric Sykes. Eric lives in Maryland. I didn't know Eric at all. He calls me out of the blue. He says, you, Rob Whitacre? And I said, yes, sir. He says, I tell you what, Rob, he says, I've been using your material for a long time, and I've got a problem. And I said, well, what is it, Eric? He said, people won't sit down and do studies with me. And he said, and I don't know what to do. And he said, how do we get people to do a Bible study when they won't sit down with you? So we talked about it, and we discussed maybe trying this virtual platform called Zoom, where we would put the booklet on the screen, right, get them on the other side, and he started doing. Then he baptized 50 people in 2 years doing that. 50 people. Right? And so during that process, a preacher by the name of Ted Spencer called me near Branson, Missouri, and his wife had a sister who lived on the East Coast. And she says, Rob, I can't get there. It's COVID. I can't even go. I said, well, use Zoom. She does. And then she calls me. She says, Rob, it works. She wants to be baptized. Rob, who in the world's going to do the baptism? I said, where does she live? Maryland. I said, Eric Sykes. And Eric actually went and baptized her. So what I learned is that this works. Okay, so it's not only good during COVID, but let me tell you applications of it. How many of you have ever been in a situation where you got a friend or a family member that live in, your area, and you want to study? They said they will study, but you can't get your schedules to align because they work these odd hours, and every time they're available, you're not, and you just can't get together. Raise your hand if you've had that happen before. I've had it happen to me, okay? So then I go to stage two. Okay, whenever you're ready, we'll do a Zoom study. So it fixes that problem. What else does it fix? Number two. So you got grandma who lives in Timbuktu, right? Or an aunt or a friend, and that's hundreds of miles, 1,000 miles away. You're not going to get to them, and you don't know when you're going to see them. Zoom study. So virtual studies have a place. How about someone who's timid? They're very skittish. They don't want to sit down with anybody. They're kind of standoffish, but they would do a Zoom study because they're in their own personal space. Zoom study. Should a virtual study ever supplant a personal study? The answer is obvious. Never. Never. But in certain situations, virtual personal Bible studies are good, and we have PowerPoints that you can use for all of our studies. You can download them, and you can use them in a virtual study. That's number two. Any questions about number two? All right, number three, digital Bible studies. Digital Bible studies. All right, so we have digital assets, and I talked about the DVDs and how, a lot of people don't use them anymore, but I didn't tell you this. On the back of the DVD is a QR code, and if they scan the QR code, guess what they get? The Bible study. Inside the DVD is a business card, and on the back of that business card is a QR code. And in fact, if you guys notice this, in your folder, you got these things that are called gift cards. Y'all see those? Y'all wonder what those are? I always leave these at restaurants, gift cards. People love gift cards. They think they're going to hit the jackpot, get $1 million. No, but we're going to help them go to heaven. Guess what? Guess what that is? That's back to the Bible digital study. And so what it is I'm doing the Bible study with you, so it's one-sided. A virtual study is two-sided, both sides interactive. A digital study is one-sided. And so if this is the only thing I can do, I can't get them to commit to a virtual study. I can't get them to do a personal study, but I can get them to do a digital study. That's what I'm going to do. Here's what, I've got a checklist. I'm a pilot. Pilots live and die by checklists. I'm always checking things off, and that's strapped to my lap. And when I get in my airplane, I'm checking, and I call it out, and I check everything off. Mechanics do the same thing. You got checklists, and we got a brother here spent his life in aviation. My dad did the same thing. And so if you don't want to miss something, all right, checklists, and maybe where you work, you use checklists. This is my checklist, 7 things. I'm going to start with number 1. I'm going to do everything in my power to get them to number 1. If it fails, I go to number 2. If it fails, I go to number 3. What's number 4? Group study. You say, why would group study be number 4? Why wouldn't you start there? Can someone tell me why group studies wouldn't be the primary way of studying with somebody? How many of you have ever done a group study? Raise your hand. You've done a group. Okay, there's Keno. I'm going to use Keno again. Keno, what happens in group studies why is it that we wouldn't recommend it? What happens? Okay, that's one very good reason. Other reasons. Why are group studies problematic? Thank you. Everybody's at a different level spiritually. What's another thing? Barbara? Okay, that's true. You can have people begin to team up on you, right? And they come together. All of those reasons are valid. So I've said this in mixed audiences. I've had preachers in audiences. I'm training preachers. And I've even kind of maybe rubbed some preachers wrong because they were all about group studies. I said, no, that should not be the primary way you do it. And they're like, well, why not? It's you could teach a lot of people at the same time. I get it. But the problem one person has becomes the problem everybody has. And then they team up on you. And I've seen this over and over again. So do group studies have a place? The answer is yes. It's how you do it. It's just how you do it. So here's what we don't do in group studies. This. I'm not going to use back to the Bible in a group study unless it's a youth group. I will at times use it with young people in a group, but never college, adults, because it gets out of hand very quickly. So I'm going to use like a study on the book of John. We're going to do a general study of the Bible, book of Acts, sometimes something very general. And as I go through the study, here's what I'm going to find. Somebody keeps doing this. Someone's engaged, really engaged. And let's say, Carl, you're engaging me in this study. And I can see that you're really interested. Guess what I'm going to do when the study ends? Anybody have a guess? Hey, Carl, my wife is the best cook in Macon County. Tomorrow night I'm smoking a brisket. Man, you come over to the house, and I got something a little deeper than what we're doing. I think you'll like it. Guess what I have? Anybody? Oh, back to the Bible. So that's how I use group studies. I use group studies to create personal studies. It is a warning I'm giving you. Be careful with group studies, or you have to be a skilled teacher. You have to be very strong because they get out of hand very quickly. But they have a place if you understand how to utilize them. Number 5, correspondence courses. All right, how many remember the old John Hurt correspondence courses with Moses, right? Holding the 10 Commandments. We've had those how long? My father-in-law was converted by John Hurt. I mean, this goes back years, 1950s, 60s, those old correspondence courses. And then, of course, we have new correspondence courses. Those are the house-to-house, heart-to-heart correspondence courses. They're very good. Alan Webster wrote those. We have the Apologetics Press correspondence courses. So we do have some really good up-to-date correspondence courses. I am not against correspondence courses. And may I add a little commentary here? I don't know why during COVID the Church of Christ didn't go back to their library, grab those stack of correspondence courses that have been there for 10 years and mail it to everyone in their community. I'm still trying to figure out why we didn't do that. Because you had a captive audience, they're not going anywhere, and that is when you use correspondence courses. Okay, we're going to use correspondence courses when we can't get to them personally. You can't get to them virtually. They're not going to watch a digital asset. You can't do the group study. So I'm going to now mail a correspondence course. What is the success rate of a correspondence course? What is it? You think it's 20%? Higher or lower? 10%? That's right. It's single-digit stuff. Am I suggesting you shouldn't do it? No, I am not. I think we should use every asset at our disposal to teach people. But I'm just suggesting that this is not going to be the most fruitful. Now, if we're dealing with people in other countries like World Bible School and we're sitting here, I'm all for that. Because you're not going to grab an airplane and go over to Nigeria. Okay? So that's all we can do. Then use it. But just be mindful, all right, that it's not the most productive. But if you're maybe a shut-in and you have a neighbor and you want to teach them, but you can't do it, there's nothing wrong with writing them a sweet note, sending the correspondence course, because you're doing what God asks you to do, and you never know. There are people converted using correspondence courses. I just want to make sure that we are realistic in the results that we're looking for. Okay, let's go to number 6. All right, an evangelism book. A lot of avid readers. People love to read, so I'm going to give you some good reads. Muscle and a Shovel. You need to use that book. Send it to people. I mean, just mail it to them and say, hey, this is a bestseller. I want you to read this. It's life-changing, and it is. It's well written. There have been probably, next to Jewel Miller, maybe one of the best tools we've had in the kingdom. A lot of people have come to Christ with Muscle and a Shovel, and I would encourage you to use it. I'd encourage every church to have a stack of them for their members to give to their friends and family, all right? Because it's a great tool, and it's done in a kind of a story-type method, and people will see themselves in that and come to a realization of the truth. And so use a book like Transformed, Reborn, all right? That's by Brother Lance Mosier, or Muscle and a Shovel. All right, last one. All right, tracts and pamphlets. House to House, Heart to Heart. We have door hangers. We're going to take those and we're going to give them out to people. All right, every week we're going to get a report somewhere of somebody who received House to House, Heart to Heart, and was baptized every week. All right? We get, of course, a lot more baptisms from people using Back to the Bible, but, sometimes those come from House to House, Heart to Heart, because they read it, they're interested, and when we use Back to the Bible. But House to House, Heart to Heart is a great tool. Every church should be using it. Every week we get reports. They say, hey, I got this magazine. I came to church, and the church then studied with me. So House to House contributes towards, all right, helping a person come to know Christ. And then we have door hangers. Now, these are 7 methods of evangelism. Can someone think of an 8th? Because I'm going to add an 8th. Okay. I would say setting the example will not teach a person how to become a Christian, but it helps lead them towards that process. What about, go ahead. Well, that would be number 1, a personal Bible study. And as I was suggesting, it's not wrong to say just read your Bible, but we would want to have it organized in some way. So we'd want them to take them from one verse to the next verse and make sure, if it's marked, like John 8:32, let's go down to John 4:24 and read the next verse. If that's what you're referring to, excellent, excellent. Absolutely. Sure. And like an organized study. Yeah. Sure. Nothing wrong with that. Absolutely. A lot of people come to Christ doing that. Getting a person a visual and letting them have something they can take with them and study. Of course, as a teacher, you know that's always going to be better. It's not wrong to do a Bible marking study, right? I would put that really with number one. It's a person, you're sitting down with somebody. It's just a little different way of doing it. Yes, sir. That's where I'm going. That's exactly where I was going. So the eighth one, and we're going to add this, if you want to add this, is social media. Okay, and we're about to add this in our school, and we've been developing and working on this, but there are social media tools you can use to help bring people to Christ. Social media. TikTok, incredible results. Paul Mays, incredible results. He averages 1 baptism a week with social media using TikTok. And we're going to be developing that a little bit more. I don't want to get into the details right now, but you can use Facebook, like a group, like a social media group, a community group. I'll give you this as we close. I know several congregations, and what they'll do is they'll develop a social media group based upon a local attraction. And I'm not as familiar with Ohio, so let me try this. Let's say we're closer to the North Sandusky, and we use Cedar Point. And they would create a Bible study group, and they would call it Cedar Point Bible Study. All right? Well, the word Cedar Point draws people, because Cedar Point is one of the largest theme parks. I think it has more roller coasters than any theme park in the world, if I'm not mistaken. I've been there several times. It's an amazing theme park. And so people will trigger off that and go to, say, a Bible study group. They don't know it's affiliated with any church, and you use that as a way of, creating interest. And maybe you have a video like, Where Do You Go When You Die by Don Blackwell, and they watch it, and then they ask questions about that, and you just keep progressing them through until you can get to the point of Bible study. So it's number 8. We're ready. We're going to add social media to the methodology.